Common Sense Army, it is a special edition of the Why I'm Right podcast, as today we talk about the attempted assassination of President Donald J. Trump. This is an episode you guys don't want to miss. This is Why I'm Right.
We live in a world filled with noise and confusion, clickbait, and outright lies in the media. But here, we cut through the clutter to find the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. This is Why I'm Right, the podcast where we dig deeper, ask the tough questions, and unravel the tangled webs of political and current events. Join us as we dissect the latest news, analyze political rhetoric, and challenge the narratives that dominate the mainstream discourse. We're not shy. From dissecting the motives behind policy decisions to uncovering the hidden agendas of public figures, it's what we do. It's time to think for ourselves. This is Why I'm Right. And now your unafraid and unapologetic host, Matt Taylor.
He is right. This is the Why I'm Right podcast, and I'm your host, Matt Taylor. And today we have a very important episode, maybe the most important episode we've ever done here on the Why I'm Right podcast. As everyone knows out there, we had a tragic event take place yesterday as former President Donald J. Trump and current frontrunner for the GOP and Republican Party was involved in a assassination attempt that took place in Butler, Pennsylvania. And today's episode is going to be a little bit different than normal. I'm actually going to have a special guest on today. This is Carlos Hernandez. Carlos is in a swing state. He's a close friend of mine, but somebody I want to have on the podcast. He's an entrepreneur, and he's somebody that thinks differently. And as we head into really the most important parts of this campaign season, we start to really want to have conversations that go a little bit deeper than me just sitting in front of a screen and telling you guys my opinion. I want to have a little bit of back and forth, and Carlos is somebody that I believe can give a different insight on really what's going on in the country. So, Carlos, welcome to the Why I'm Right podcast.
Matt, thanks for having me. Really excited to hop on here today and, have this conversation. And, just really dig deep into what's going on. I think this is a very, very important event that a lot of people need to have a conversation about, whether you're on the left, whether you're on the right. So, I want us to dig into it and just really explore all of the different possible motives and, some of the potential outcomes of this event.
Yeah, and we're talking about, it's a historic event, as you mentioned, and probably the most historic event that's ever happened in my lifetime, but really potentially one of the most historic events that's happened in American history, up there with the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, the attempted assassination on Ronald Reagan. We've seen this kind of thing go on throughout our history, the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., the assassination of JFK. There's been, I talked to one of my close friends and neighbors yesterday, and he's like, I can't believe this has happened in America. And it's an interesting thing because I said to him, this has been something that's gone on in American history. It's just the political environment that we're in today is something that I think is unique. And I think it almost makes it, hit differently when we see what we saw yesterday. And I'm going to start this podcast here telling you kind of the way I saw it, and then you and I can kind of go back and forth. But, I sat down yesterday, I finished dinner, and I was sitting down with my wife waiting for Trump to come out. He was supposed to come out at, I believe, 5 o'clock or whatever it was. We had it on, and as Trump typically does, he comes out a little bit later. Finally, he comes out, and he's sitting there in front of tens of thousands of people in a swing state in Pennsylvania, and it was the normal Trump that, a lot of people on the right have come to not only like, but love. And this guy goes out there and does his typical intro. He's dancing on the stage, the same songs anytime you turn on the TV and you see Trump, this was just like any rally. And there was, speculation yesterday that Trump was going to be potentially announcing his VP as we're getting set for the RNC convention starting tomorrow on Monday. And he goes out there, and my wife and I are sitting there with our 8-month-old daughter watching on the television, and exactly what everyone has now seen, the video that's gone viral, the story of the century, unfolds, and I'm watching it, and I pick up the phone immediately and I call you. I say, dude, you got to turn on your TV because we just witnessed somebody shoot Donald Trump. And the scary thing is, Carlos, and I want your opinion on this, but the scariest thing is as shocking as it was to see, it wasn't something that is, shocking to a lot of people, because this guy has been the target of so much hate, so much vitriol. They've gone after him. They impeached him twice. They called him a Russian agent back in 2016, an illegitimate president back in 2016. Impeach him twice. They assassinate his character for, years and years and years. January 6th comes. They use that as, Trump rallied up an insurrection. And then the last, 4 years, 3.5 years, it's been all about this lawfare in the country where they're going after him on charges that many people, including myself, believe that he would not be getting charged unless he was the front runner for president. So they've assassinated this guy's character for so long, and nothing has worked against this guy. Every time they go after him, they raid his house on Mar-a-Lago, Carlos, and his poll numbers go up. They get his mugshot in Georgia, his poll numbers go up. They convict him in New York City of 34 felony counts, and the guy raises more money in a 1-month period than anyone in the history of any political party ever around the world. This guy is built different. And the craziest moment is you see him get shot. You see what happened yesterday. He then gets up as Secret Service surrounds him. And instead of rushing off the stage, as no one would, be against him doing that. If I got shot, I would probably be ready to run out there. No, this guy is built different. He stands there in front of his people and in front of the American people and raises his fist and does a fist bump to let everyone know America's coming back stronger. Fight. We're going to fight. He said fight 3 times. He gets pulled off the stage as blood's dripping down this guy's face, and he's fist bumping to the American people, letting them know this too shall pass, and we will get through stronger and stronger than ever before, and we're going to make America great again. And it was a crazy scene to witness. So my question to you, I just told you my experience. Before we really do a deep dive, what was your experience and what were you thinking as you watched yesterday's events unfold?
Yeah, so, like you said, you gave me a call, and the first thing that you asked me was, where are you at right now? And I instantly knew that this was something that was very important. So I told her, you know what? I'm at home. You said, turn on the news, take a look at what's going on. And I strongly believe that this is going to be one of those moments where you're going to know where you were at when it happened, no matter who you are. And the biggest thing that stood out to me was, you're looking at this rally, you're looking at a lot of his supporters who are going there to see him, who are going there to listen to his message, to show the support. And you don't really think about the dangers that could be lurking around, just around the corner. So number one for me was security. This is obviously something that, again, like you said, and I hate to say this, we knew that there was going to be an attempt at some point, just given all the different things that have been going around in his political campaign, and with all of the different attacks on him with the Russia, with the Mar-a-Lago raid. So there was indicators that, there was a possibility of this happening, but it's very unfortunate to actually see it become a reality. Because that just kind of gives you an insight as to what kind of message is being portrayed to the younger generation. I'm looking at the reports and hopping on X, looking at all the latest updates, and within minutes they were able to find, this is who we think the gunman was. And now reports coming out that it was I believe a 22-year-old or 20-year-old, someone who's so young, and just going out there and committing such a hateful crime. It's really concerning. What is the message that we're portraying? What is the message that the media is putting out, that the left is putting out? This woke mindset, it's really horrible. If you don't want somebody to win, then are we going to default to taking physical action towards the person? It's definitely very concerning. And, I do want to say that I think we should send our condolences to those to that person who was out there and showing their support for Trump, and unfortunately was a victim of what happened, because you don't think about these things as you're going there. But safety is definitely one of the biggest concerns now. There's going to be a lot of things coming out within the next 2 to 3 days. I think that we're going to find out that there's a lot of negligence when it comes to the safety of these events. With somebody like Trump, someone who really enjoys being out in public, enjoys being there for the people, I think that it's time that there's that extra step in ensuring that he's going to be safe and protected. At the end of the day, he's a father, he's a grandfather. He's a friend of people. He's a human being. So it's very unfortunate that we have to see things get to this point. I honestly feel that with this event happening, there's going to be a major shift, and I'm already seeing it. I mean, we're seeing it all over social media. You're seeing people who would never post anything about Trump, who would never show their support, coming out and saying, "I support Trump. I support what he stands for." We're seeing people who might have been on that team of saying that he shouldn't be president, that he's an evil person, that he's not the right person for our office, come out and saying, "You know what? I think that I was being fed lies. I think that I was being fed something that wasn't true, that's not accurate." So we're already starting to see a shift, especially some of the people in my group who are traditionally Democratic. They're coming out and showing that support. It's really important for people to be able to see the reality of things. And I'll say this right off the bat too. And you know this too. This was not an event that was a lone man event. Like, this was not one single person doing this. And the media is going to paint it that way. They're going to say, "Oh, this person had mental issues. This person, it was just he had an agenda." But I strongly believe that it takes a lot of time, effort, and more than one person to orchestrate something like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's a coordinated attack, however you want to break it down. And the media, like you said, the media has a lot of responsibility, I believe, not just for what happened yesterday. I'm not going to pinpoint and say the media coverage led to this guy. And I'm not even going to say the guy's name. He's a 20-year-old. He's getting reports. He's getting the coverage that, frankly, I believe he wanted for this. So I'm not even going to say his name on this podcast because I don't think he deserves it. I think he deserves to be a faceless, nameless coward for doing the act he did yesterday. But what I want to mention, and you're exactly right, this had to be, and I don't want to get into conspiracy necessarily, but this had to be a coordinated effort that wasn't just one man. This guy actually got within 150 yards, however you want to break it down. There's different reports coming out, 130 yards, 150 yards. I'll go with the 150 to be safe here. But for him to get within 150 yards on a rooftop with an AK and shoot the former president and current frontrunner, the fact that he even got on that rooftop and had the shot is beyond a failure of the Secret Service, beyond a failure of law enforcement, and frankly, it leads to a lot of these conspiracy theories now coming out that this was coordinated internally, an inside job. I mean, you hear all these things, and I don't want to speculate on that because, again, I have no idea. The information will come out, but it's important to note, and we talked about this yesterday, Carlos, we're now 60 years, 50, 60 years from the JFK assassination, which took place in a similar manner, meaning it took place on national television. People were watching live, and all of a sudden, JFK, for lack of better words, was shot directly in the head on national television. And we still haven't had any of those reports, any of the internal documents from the CIA, any of the internal documents from the Secret Service, any of that get released out there to the public. And we're now tens and tens and tens of years, decades from that event taking place. And when people don't have the trust, and this goes back to the overarching theme that I talk about on this podcast all the time, when people, the average American citizen, doesn't have belief in our own government, doesn't have trust in our own media, doesn't have trust in any of these three-letter agencies, whether it's the FBI, the CIA, any, even Secret Service at this point, it's a major problem because it will always lead to somebody thinking, and a group of people thinking, that it could have been an inside job. And I talk about this all the time on this podcast because I know it's unrelated, Carlos, but to me it's very related. You go back to 2020, leading into the election that many people on the right think was a stolen election. We don't have to get into that today. But leading into that election, the Hunter Biden laptop story got leaked, right? All of the information that was on the Hunter Biden laptop that actually directly implicates President Joe Biden into being involved in these foreign business deals, quid pro quo, and different actions, and obviously the cocaine use and underage girls and other things that Hunter Biden was doing. And we had 51 intelligence agents from the CIA sign an internal memo that got released to the public saying the Hunter Biden laptop story is Russia misinformation. It's a fake laptop. This is just another Russia misinformation. We need to ignore it. And now we find out 4 years later, the actual FBI, who had members sign off that it was a fake laptop, you had the same members of the FBI use the laptop in a case against Hunter Biden as actual evidence, meaning everything on that laptop that got released was true and accurate. That's a problem in this country. Where's the accountability for those 51 intelligence agents? Because when there is no accountability for those agents and we find out we've been lied to for 4 years, how are we, as the American people, supposed to now trust blindly the story that we're being told today that it was a lone gunman who just happened to get up on a rooftop? And I mean, I've seen videos. I know you've seen videos. To me, and again, I don't want to get into speculation here because it's not really what today is about, but Carlos, you've seen the same videos I've seen where it looks like, at least at the surface level, that Secret Service was on that pavilion and had their snipers aimed at this guy well before he shot his first shot. So they knew this guy was there, whether it was minutes before, whether it was 20 seconds before, 30 seconds before. And when you see what goes down, and obviously, like you mentioned, innocent people, we now have an innocent guy that was killed, who was a firefighter, who had his daughter there, who had his wife there, and multiple other people shot. 2 people are in critical condition today. And obviously, former President Trump takes a bullet to the side of his head, his ear. I mean, we're at a point where, again, the question in my mind becomes, how are we supposed to accept the narrative that we're being fed right now? And how are we supposed to not have conspiracy theories about it being a potential inside job or any of that kind of stuff when there's no trust and accountability for past actions of the FBI, past actions of the CIA, past actions of Secret Service, who many people today believe were involved in the JFK assassination and other events that have gone on in our history. What's your take on all of that? I know it's a lot, but what's your take on all of that? How are we supposed to trust these agencies and people who are now conducting this investigation?
Well, you bring up really great points, and that is the reality of what we're facing now. It's that how can you trust? How can the American people trust these three-letter agencies? I kind of want to push back a little bit on there's videos of the snipers from Secret Service looking at the individual who's on the roof, and I kind of thought about it multiple different ways. The first was if they saw this person on the roof, they had to have some form of indication that this was a threat. However, we also don't know how long it took them to realize that he actually had a weapon. But at the same time, there's reports coming out that he had an AR-15. There's other reports coming out that it was a homemade weapon. So I don't really want to jump into it and saying they immediately identified the gun, so that's why they should have taken action immediately. Because remember, this is all within seconds. But I do strongly believe that if they were up there and they had a visual on him, that they should have taken extra measures to potentially take that person into custody, look into it before this even happened. So it's an area where I don't have enough information to formulate a strong opinion on quite yet. But I do think that if there was a weapon seen and if there was an immediate threat, then it shouldn't have taken that long for them to take action.
Well, to jump in here for a second, again, the problem becomes, why is there anyone getting within 150 yards of a former president and getting on a rooftop? Forget if they have a weapon or not. That's a problem, clearly. It was the biggest problem, clearly. But why is anyone getting that close to a former president in an area that's supposed to be being secured by the Secret Service, who are sworn in to protect the principal, sworn in to protect Donald Trump in this circumstance? I'm going to play you a quick clip here for everyone out there, and I want to get your reaction to it. This is Dan Bongino, and if you don't know, we played Dan Bongino's clips a bunch on this podcast. He's somebody that's in the conservative media world, but frankly, he's probably the best person to talk about this issue. Why, you may ask? It's because he was a Secret Service member for the Obama administration, for the Bush administration, and he's been involved in these kind of, events that are supposed to be secure, and he called it one of the biggest failures he's ever seen. This is Dan Bongino, again, former Secret Service member for the Obama administration and Bush administration, talking about the events of yesterday. I'll play this quick, Carlos, and then I want to get your take.
Job, and only one job. Your job is keep the body alive no matter what. Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Jill Biden, the president of Djibouti, it doesn't matter. That is your job. They absolutely, resolutely, 100% failed. Not a single excuse should be made. Not a single excuse should be attempted. This should be the subject of congressional hearings and investigations, because if they can't do this, and this is the best technology you had, then folks, there's no purpose anymore. This was an apocalyptic security failure, and don't ever forget, an uneventful failure is never a success. And the fact that Donald Trump didn't die yesterday is no reason for anybody to take some kind of victory lap. And before we start sending out plaudits, we better look and do a hot wash on this and find out exactly how abysmal this security plan was.
So you hear it there. That's, like I said, Dan Bongino, former Secret Service for Obama, talking about how the Secret Service failed yesterday. They have one mission, one objective, one sole purpose, and that is protect the body of the principal, in this case, Donald Trump, or frankly, any president or former president or any principal, and they failed yesterday. And he said there was really, and he goes on later in the same interview to talk about how typically during events like this, where a former president and current frontrunner for president, potentially the next president of the United States, that they're supposed to secure 1,000 yards out, meaning 1,000 yards from wherever the president is, they're supposed to have every building secure, every rooftop secure, where no one has a shot at the former president, because there are crazy people out there that do crazy things, especially in the political climate we're in. So, Carlos, my question to you, I know you don't want to speculate necessarily on should they have taken the guy out earlier, but how does someone get on a rooftop within 150 yards? Listen, there are NFL quarterbacks who can almost throw the ball 150 yards. How is a guy getting that close with any kind of weapon or any kind of danger to a former president?
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up a really great point, and to kind of dig a little bit deeper into Dan Bongino. Obviously this guy has had multiple years of experience. I believe he has over 16 years of experience in law enforcement and security. So for him to come out and say that this was a security failure, that really carries a lot of weight, especially considering that he was there for to protect presidents such as George Bush and, of course, Barack Obama. It really tells you just how deep in that role he was in his involvement. So for him to come out and say, this was a security failure, there has to be indicators that, again, I know we don't want to dig into conspiracies here, but that this was not a lone gunman attack. We're talking about a small area, and for him to be 100 yards out, even just the principle of him being on that roof, of him being in there, maybe not even being identified before entering the event or being at the event, that's a big red flag. So again, the question that I started to dabble out in is, what are the security measures that are being taken for these events, and what things are being neglected? Because I'll give you an example. And I want to talk about this too. So we have Elon Musk, who just recently came out and endorsed President Trump. One of his methods is, question why and ask the person who makes the requirement why the requirement exists. So I think that right now, one of the biggest things that needs to happen is to really have either a clean house or just investigate the Secret Service team, the head of the Secret Service, to really know who's making the decisions as to what safety precautions are being taken, and how this could have slipped through the cracks. Because I'm sure that if this happened, there's been multiple different things that have been neglected in previous rallies that we wouldn't even know even before this stuff happened. So I think that it's unacceptable. I think that, when you have a president, somebody as big as Trump, somebody who is as controversial as Trump, there's just no excuse for anything like this to happen or to even have the possibility to occur. So I think that we can all recognize that this was a big flop for the Secret Service. And again, we're going to have to just kind of see what comes out. And now we have access to videos from people who were at the rally. And that's one of the beautiful things about public journalism, is that you can put out your piece of information, you can put out your piece of content. So I think that if we can lean on those pieces of video, people's eyewitness testimonies, it's really going to help us piece together how exactly this happened. Somebody had to see this person get on that roof.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen videos, again, and we live in a world right now where it's a scary world for a variety of reasons. One being AI has become so good, we start to question what's real, what's not. And I hate that because, like you said, one of the biggest benefits of social media, even this podcast here, is, an average person can actually have a voice and can make a difference and can get their, again, when you're at an event like this, their footage out there. If you have an opinion, you can get your opinion out there. You're no longer, going back to the JFK stuff, right? The only video you got to see was the video that they put out, meaning the media put out, where if you believe in a establishment or a deep state and stuff like that, that's the only video you're seeing. Now you're seeing, in this case, there's tens of thousands of people at this rally. Probably tens of thousands of people had their camera out during this shooting, and we're going to see tens of thousands of views of this event. So I think we're going to uncover so much in the coming weeks and coming days. I'm going to point this question at you, and again, I know it's an unfair question to ask, but again, we're having this conversation because of the magnitude of this event and what it means for the country. My question to you, how much does the Democrat Party, the Biden campaign, and the media, how much accountability do they have for pushing a false agenda, a false narrative about Trump and comparing him to Hitler, calling him a threat to democracy, and frankly, using their words, right, basically doing an insurrection to cause this kind of event to happen? Again, I said it at the start of the podcast, it's a very scary moment for America. It's a very tragic moment for America. But beyond that, it's a shocking moment for most people, including myself, that we watched this happen. But many people in the right have been saying this is coming because nothing they've done against this guy, the assassination of his character, going after him in the courts, going after him, impeaching him, all of the stuff I mentioned earlier. How much responsibility is there on the media and the Democrat Party for comparing Donald Trump to Hitler and calling him basically the devil for the last 8 years?
Matt, that's a really great question. I think that ultimately, at the end of the day, responsibility has to be taken from both sides. And the reason I say that is because the messages that we're putting out are messages that, if they're not said in the correct context, if they're not said correctly, somebody like this 20-year-old can take that message and run with it and say, you know what, I'm going to do something about that. I'm going to be the one that goes out and becomes the hero for such and such person. We live right now in a time where, again, we go back to AI, we go back to the access to public information through public journalism. There's so many mixed signals that it's so easy for someone to take something out of context and just formulate their own idea without questioning things. I think that it definitely does not help with the Democratic Party calling Trump a Nazi and all of these other hateful things, and then especially going after his, they did the character assassination on him. They tried to make him run out of money. So what example are they giving? What can somebody take from this?
And it's not fair to say, Carlos, but again, I have to make the comparison, because if you listen to the mainstream narrative for the last 8-10 years now about Donald Trump, calling him Hitler, calling him a threat to democracy, calling him the biggest threat to our society, that if he gets in office, he's going to change the Constitution and take away all your rights. I mean, the things they've said about Trump, the scariest thing, and I know it's not fair because of what happened yesterday. Why is Biden, why is Kamala Harris, why is Obama, why is Clinton, why are all these people wishing him well if he is the threat to democracy that they claim he has been the last 8 years? Why would they now say we're wishing for a speedy recovery for Hitler? We're wishing for a speedy recovery for the guy that's the biggest threat to democracy. If they truly believed the narrative that they've been pushing down everyone's throat for the last 10 years, then why are they now wishing him well in this moment?
And here's the thing, in the public eye, you can wish anybody well, but what's going on behind closed doors? What are they really saying behind closed doors? So it's very unfortunate. And again, it does not help that the media is portraying him that way. It does not help that they're scaring the younger generation, that they're putting these ideas into their head of saying, this is a bad person. This person's going to change things, and then your life is going to suck. Because again, things like this can happen. So the media is definitely responsible. Every time you turn on the news, there's always something going on. Even with the headlines yesterday, I sent you a message about this. What was the media saying? What were these articles saying?
Yeah, loud bangs heard of Trump. I mean, the stuff they were saying yesterday, and I know you and I discussed it briefly, I mean, it took them forever to even say it was an assassination attempt, so late in the day that even Biden took the stage, addressed the public, and was asked during the press conference, was this an assassination attempt? Was this a shooting? And he couldn't say to the American public, yes, it was. Well, everyone, I was watching it live. Everyone who watched it live knew immediately what it was when it happened. There was no question. I called you minutes after it happened, and I said, they just shot Trump, and they just had a shooting at his rally. This was an assassination attempt. How could I see that with my own eyes, but yet the media, it took them 6-7 hours to finally say, yes, this was an assassination attempt. That's part of the problem in this country, too, is again, people have no trust in the media, and I get it. The media doesn't want to get it wrong, because if they put something out there, again, they're going to be called fake news. I get all that. But the problem is, when the media is unwilling to cover it for what it truly is, people start questioning and getting into the conspiracy theories that I do believe can be dangerous. The problem is, a lot of the conspiracy theories over the last 10 years, with COVID, with Russia, with everything that's gone on in this country, with the election, I mean, there's a lot of conspiracy theories that have turned out to be more true than the narrative that the media has pushed down our throats. And I don't want to shift the conversation too much, but I do want to ask you this. You say the media has responsibility. You say, Biden has responsibility. Their campaigns have responsibility. My question is, where does America go from here? We just witnessed one of the most historic events, like I said, in the last 100 years in this country, where you said at the top of the podcast, this is one of those events where you're going to remember where you were when Donald Trump was shot. Everyone's going to remember. I mean, it's a crazy event, and I can't believe we're even having this conversation. Where does America go from here? Where does the media go from here? Do you believe we're going to see a different media moving forward? Are we going to see a different Biden campaign moving forward? Meaning, they're no longer going to call him a threat to democracy. They're no longer going to call him an existential threat to the country. They're no longer going to, make a comparison between Trump and Hitler. I mean, at some point, do you think that's going to happen? Does an event this big change that? Or where do we go as a country from here? Because if not, my question is, how is anyone ever going to believe anything that comes out of these people's mouth moving forward? And how do you not expect the political climate to tone down if you're going to keep doing it even after an assassination attempt?
Yeah, I mean, I think I really believe that after this event, number one, the media is going to need to really, really focus on pushing out real and responsible and doing responsible reporting of the news. I think that they also understand that a lot of what happened can be traced to the message that they're putting out there. And like you said, people will not trust the media. People already don't trust the media. So I think that we're going to see a massive change in the way that reporting is done through mainstream media. We're going to see a lot more of accurate information, a lot less of the fake news that we're seeing now. I also think that just as a country as a whole, and I guess this is just what I'm wishing for, is that we see the country come together. That after what happened yesterday, if it, God forbid, it would have happened, I strongly believe we would have had a civil war, and you and I wouldn't be talking about this. We would be talking about the different things that are starting to happen in different states. Look at what happened with the Black Lives Matter movement. Look at what happened when COVID happened. I mean, there was just a lot of chaos. So it's very unfortunate that that within an inch of where this bullet went through, we were seconds away from a massive, massive civil war within the country. I strongly believe that's the case. I'm curious to know if that's what you think too.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
we're not there.
You talk about it. I mean, you used the word civil war, and I agree. I think we have been on the verge of really being left versus right in this country, and it's sad to see. I mean, I have a daughter, as you know, growing up in this climate is a scary thought. My wife said it last night. It's scary that we're raising a child in this climate because we don't know what the world's going to look like. I mean, that's one of the reasons I do this podcast, is because I do care about this country. I care about this country deeply, not just for my lifetime, but for lifetimes of my daughter and her daughter and her son. I mean, going for generations to come. This country needs to be unified. But you mentioned civil war, and it's funny, but it's not funny, because here's the thing, and I hate making the comparison again, but I have to. They released a movie, Carlos, 2 months ago called Civil War, and the protagonist in that movie, the movie ends with the character who's essentially portraying Donald Trump in the film getting shot, and the protagonist is the guy that shoots that character in the movie, representing, to a lot of people out there, representing that if you shoot Trump, it's a good thing. You're the protagonist in this story. And the scary thing is, I mean, during our lifetime, in our generation growing up, the storyline always has been what? All about how these video games and different things are, impacting violence and causing these school shootings and causing the country to kind of change. Who's held responsible when you put out a movie called Civil War and you essentially show somebody kill Trump as the protagonist, and then we watch the events of yesterday where someone shoots Trump, a young, impressionable person, as you mentioned? I don't know where the country goes from here. I do believe we're on the verge of a civil war. We're on the verge of really bad times in this country, and I hate saying that because I am somebody that believes the future can be bright. America can be great. America can be what we once were, which was the leader of the world. And we have gone so far in the last 4 years. And the focus of this administration, the Biden administration, and I don't even want to make it political, but you watch these policies of this administration particularly, and their focus is not on the greatness of this country, is not on the future of this nation. You look at what they focus on. They focus on things that really, I hate saying it, don't matter to the average American. They focus on DEI. They focus on things, policies, immigration policies that open the border and allow people to just walk in the country that we have no idea who they are. Millions and millions of people. And at some point, that's a danger to the average person who's in this country. And frankly, as a president, as a government, you have a responsibility to the people who pay taxes, to the people who put you in office, to the people who elected you. We're a democratic republic where you're the representative of the people, by the people, for the people. But when you're talking about what this administration has done, and you talk about where we're heading as a country, I don't know. I don't think we're done with this political violence. I mean, you really look at the Democrat Party and the media. What did they do over the last 4 years? They told you that Trump had an insurrection on January 6th, where again, no one was armed to enter the Capitol. They called it the worst day in the history of the country. Pelosi was out there saying January 6th will be the worst day in the history of the country. Well, I'll be honest with you. Most people have a bigger, on both sides, left and right, both sides of the aisle, the middle of the country, have a bigger impact this moment yesterday watching on live television where you mentioned it, Carlos, 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters to the left, to the right, and what happens? We're talking about Trump getting his face blown off on national television. And like you said, there were 75 million people out there that voted for Trump. What are they going to do? What's their reaction going to be? Because this guy is their movement. This guy is looking for what they believe brings back American greatness. The leader of the free world, the leader of the country. And I hate saying it. We talked about kind of the negatives of yesterday. What about the positives? I mean, really, take a moment for a second and think about what we watched yesterday. Donald Trump got shot on a stage on national television in front of the entire world. This video has been played millions and millions of times. And Trump had the wherewithal. Talk about Biden not being mentally there. Watch what Trump did. Trump actually got shot. The Secret Service rushed him, jumped on top of him. Again, those people are heroes that were there yesterday. But look at the people around Trump. Those people, yes, they ducked. Yes, they were scared. But what did Trump do in the immediate, 30 seconds after he was just shot? Trump stands up, puts his fist in the air, says, fight, fight. We're not done. America, so many people have said it's the scariest thing they've seen. It's the saddest thing they've seen. I'll be honest with you. As scary and sad as yesterday was, I believe Trump was a metaphor about where we are as a country. Because yes, over the last 4 years, we've been shot. We've been wounded. And what do we have to do? We have to stand up. We got to put our fists in the air. We have to fight. Because we're in a moment right now in this country where, again, if we continue down the path of focusing on DEI, focusing on open border policies, focusing on supporting foreign wars using taxpayer dollars, again, causing inflation in this country where people will have no choice moving forward. We're in a moment right now that is so important in our nation's history. And yesterday, yes, as scary of a day it was, as sad of a day as it was, I'll be honest with you. I look at it completely different. I think this is a moment that could change the course of history. I think there's a moment where a lot of people who were on the fence yesterday are no longer on the fence. You mentioned it, in detail. You're talking about a guy in Elon Musk who has never endorsed a candidate, never been involved in politics, has done everything he can to stay out of the fray. Somebody who, again, benefits off of the Democrat Party's agenda, meaning he has an electric car company. The Democrat Party is so focused on the environment, he would probably want Democratic policies, especially environmentally, involved moving forward that would benefit his bottom line. And what did he do yesterday? Not only the day before Trump gets shot, he goes out and says, I'm actually going to donate money to a Trump campaign, a Trump super PAC. Then Trump gets shot yesterday, and Elon Musk, somebody who's done everything in his power to stay out of the political fray, jumped right in and said, I fully endorse Donald J. Trump for president. And you're talking about, like I said, there is a opportunity here that many people have discussed briefly. And it's hard to discuss when you're talking about a president getting shot, a former president getting shot. But there is an opportunity in this country for real unity to occur. Biden ran on in 2020. He's going to unify the country, bring back normalcy to the presidency. I'll be honest. What we've seen the last 4 years has been anything but unifying the country. You're weaponizing the Department of Justice, weaponizing, every political weapon you could possibly have, things that have never been politically weaponized in the past against one guy. And this guy has prevailed over and over. And at some point in time, I've said it before on this podcast, you got to ask yourself, any liberal out there, and frankly, I hate saying this, any liberal out there, my question is simple. Who would you rather have on your team? Who would you rather have standing in the Oval Office, representing the country? Some guy that can barely formulate a sentence? Or would you rather have the guy that has gotten through impeachments, gotten through being called a Russian asset, gotten through all of these, weaponization of the Department of Justice, criminalizing him, going after his family, going after his businesses, going after his money? Now you have him being shot, and this guy stands up, puts his fist in the air and says, we're going to fight. This is America. Who would you rather have going into a meeting with Xi in China? Who would you rather have going into a meeting with Vladimir Putin? Biden or that guy? And so I'll pose the question your way. Do you think there's any chance that yesterday's events, as tragic, as sad, as terrible as they were, as terrible as they could have been, you said we're a millimeter away from civil war. That bullet goes through Trump's head. We're at civil war. My question to you, Carlos, is there a potential that millimeter can bring the country together? What we watched yesterday, could it unify the country around this guy? Or are we still heading towards political warfare, back and forth, right versus left, where people can't come together? Where are we heading as a country?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I strongly believe that we're heading into a better position as a country. Again, events like this are events that have the ability to bring people together. Again, like I mentioned to you earlier in the call, I've already starting to see a lot of people come together, a lot of people starting to share their perspective on what happened, a lot of people starting to drop the I think Trump is this, I think Trump is that card, and now actually taking the time to look into what he stands for, to look into the message that he's sending, and they're really starting to do their own due diligence. So I strongly believe that America is going to come together. I think that as a country, we're going to see a lot of cultural shifts. Again, I mentioned to you that the media is going to need to heavily move into accurate reporting. And I think that we're also going to see a lot of accountability when it comes to different people making certain comments about political candidates or about the president. So I strongly believe that we're going to see we're going to be in a much better position. It sucks that an event like this has to happen in order for that to take place, but I like to be optimistic and wrong than pessimistic and right. I think that we really need to go into this with the right mindset. I think that we need to share the message. We need to also, like what you and I are doing right now, and it's talking about these things. It's agree to disagree, and to be able to have conversations with an open mind. I really respect people who change their mind after they get a new set of data. And I think that you also respect that too. It's okay if you strongly believe something, and then when new stuff comes out and you actually read the facts, you go, you know what, I was wrong, or what I thought was wrong. Maybe it's time for me to to really take a different position here. So I think that we're going to see the country come together, and we're going to see a lot of changes, both in security for future events like this. We're also going to see. I'm hopeful that we see Congress come together, and that we see different political heads coming together and working in a way where it's not so directly attacking the other person. I mean, Trump has just been through so much when it comes to the media, the Democratic Party trying to assassinate his character, again throwing him all of this dirt, that it's time to move on from that. It's time to move on to doing it the right way. So I think that we have an opportunity here. I think it starts with us, including you and I, and taking this opportunity and doing something out of it. We can't let this opportunity slip.
Yeah, I mean, we're heading into the Republican convention, which is starting tomorrow in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And again, I hate saying it, everything they've done to Trump over the last 6, 7, 8 years at this point has only made Trump stronger. And this is, again, another one of those moments where you're a millimeter away from Trump not being alive today. And I think it's important for every American out there to really take a minute and think about what would have happened if that millimeter went the other way. And really take a minute. But you're heading into the RNC convention where now everyone's eyes, the media has no choice now but to cover Donald Trump getting on the stage, probably with a bandage around his ear. And Trump's going to have a minute. I say a minute, a moment where he's going to be able to talk to every single American, every single person, frankly, on the world that has a phone, that has access to internet. Everyone's going to see Trump's next words. It's just the truth. Everyone watched yesterday's events, and I believe, Melania Trump recently just put out a statement earlier today, and it was probably one of the most articulate and thoughtful messages we've ever seen from any first lady or anyone really in politics, to be honest with you, talking about the human element in all this, talking about how we can't look at each other as enemies, especially in our own country. You can't be right versus left. You're talking about a monster who did a monstrous thing yesterday. And we have to remember that we're all human, and we have to relate to each other, like you mentioned, where we have to be able to talk back and forth, especially about things we disagree. That's the only way we can grow. And I say it all the time. The reason I do this podcast is because I believe there is evil in this world. I believe there is ulterior motives from the media, from the elites, from people who have been in power, and frankly, people we don't even know their names. And all of a sudden, we need to, as the average person, people in business, you run a business, I own multiple businesses. You're in a very important state in this country. I lived in North Carolina for a long time. It's a great state. And it's just so important that people of all backgrounds, of all beliefs, of all races, of all religions, of all colors, of all creeds, have the ability to really have a common sense conversation, as you said, be willing to change your mind and change your philosophy. Because I hate saying it, if we just blindly accept the narrative that's pumped down our throat over and over, and we know a lot of the times the narrative is incorrect later, and it's too late at that point. Well, we're at a point in this country, and we're at a point in our world right now, Carlos, where it's so important, and I love that you mentioned it, that people like you, people like me, people that are listening to this podcast have the ability in this country. Free speech is so important. That's why people like Elon Musk are supporting Donald Trump, are against the censorship agenda. That's why Elon Musk lost money in Twitter in the beginning, right? He spent a shitload of money to buy Twitter because he did not like seeing the censorship that went on during COVID, the censorship of something that eventually hurt not only people, but businesses, livelihoods, families. And we're at a point where we need to be able to disagree and have discourse and go back and forth and think about it. And events like yesterday just remind you, and this is what Melania Trump was saying, remind you that we're all human. And we all, even if we disagree, we need to be able to be in a society that allows for common sense to prevail. Because I frankly believe common sense typically prevails. And when people in the media, distort facts and do what they do, it's hard for the average person to have that conversation, especially when there's censorship on the other side. So as we move forward on the Why I'm Right podcast, I say this on every episode, the one way you can help in our mission and grow the Common Sense Army one day at a time, one podcast at a time, is by clicking the subscribe button right here below. Whether you're seeing this on YouTube, on Spotify, on Instagram, wherever you're seeing this podcast, make sure you subscribe and follow us at Why I'm Right on Instagram, at Why I'm Right Pod on X. And like I say, if you want to be on the Why I'm Right podcast, it's very simple. Shoot me an email. I'll answer any email, any question. If it's about Donald Trump, about what happened yesterday, about what I believe happened yesterday, where I think we're heading as a country, all you have to do is send me an email, matt@whyimrightpodcast.com, or visit us on our website at www.whyimrightpodcast.com. It's so critically important that we are able to have discourse. And it's important for you to get involved. We're at a moment where it's no longer okay to sit on the sidelines. Years ago, it was fine. Years ago, people didn't have the conversations, and that's why I believe the media got so powerful, and the elites in this country who have billions and billions of dollars got so powerful, is because people weren't wanting to have political conversations. But you have to. You have to talk to your neighbor, talk to your relatives. Even if you disagree, I know it's uncomfortable. We have to, as a nation, become comfortable with uncomfortable conversations, especially when the result can be as permanent as yesterday could have been. Someone is dead today because someone was so against Donald Trump, so against his movement, that they tried taking him out, and frankly, someone got caught in the crosshairs, and 2 more people are in critical condition, and that's the risk that goes on in this country. It's time for us to come together, and like I said earlier, I think we're heading towards unity. I think we're heading towards a landslide victory. That doesn't mean don't go out and vote. We need every vote in this country. And if you support Trump or you support Biden, frankly, I don't care. It's not enough anymore to sit on the sidelines. We as Americans need to do our American duty. Go out and vote. Talk to your friends. Talk to your family. And we're heading right now in a moment where that has never been more important than it is right now. Carlos, I'm going to throw it to you one last time here. Anything you want to say out there to anyone in the Why I'm Right world? Anything you want to say to them? Here's your moment.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. I mean, the biggest thing for me is just to encourage people to question things. It's to take the time, the extra time that it takes to look at multiple sources, come to your own conclusions, and not just blindly believe what you hear on the news, what you hear on the media. We're very fortunate to be living in a time now where we have access to information, and platforms such as X help with having people, upload their pieces of content, their pieces of video, that helps you formulate your decisions. So I strongly encourage everyone to question and to take action. Have those conversations. Have these conversations that are difficult to have. It's okay to agree to disagree, and that's the only way that you'll actually be able to have civil conversations and to be able to move forward in the correct way. So it's really up to us. And like I said to you, Matt, in the beginning of the podcast, this is an opportunity where it's really up to us to take this into a better future and to do the things the right way. So that's all I got to say for now. I'm sure that we're going to see a lot of different things coming up and surfacing from the event. But let's keep moving forward and doing it in a way where it's a good thing for the country, and that we're doing everything that we can to continue to make America the place that it once was. And like Trump says, make America great again. So Matt, I appreciate you having me on your podcast, and look forward to talking in the future.
Yeah, of course. We'd love to have you back on, Carlos, anytime. And like you said, tonight we're going to see Joe Biden take a press conference in the Oval Office. And I hope, more than anything, I hope we see Biden come out and really address the people in this country and address his side of the aisle. Because for the last 4 or 5 years, all we've heard about is January 6th, the insurrection, how bad the Republicans are, how Trump's a threat to democracy. Joe Biden has an opportunity tonight, too, to address really what went on. And I believe if he really wants to unify this country, it starts with him. He can go out tonight and say, we're going to investigate this to the fullest. Anyone who was involved is going to be sent to Guantanamo Bay. This was terrorism. This took place on our soil against one of our people in this American country that we all love. This is a moment for Biden tonight that he can capitalize on. And like I said, we on the Why I'm Right podcast will tune in and keep you guys updated. And as we head into the RNC, we got an episode coming out. As soon as Trump addresses the people, I'm going to hop on and do a podcast as well, because I believe Trump is going to seize the moment. And really, I hate saying I think the election is over, but I believe what happened yesterday will bring more people to Trump, because there already were people, so many people, that were on the fence waiting to see what happened. They watched the persecution. They watched the Department of Justice being weaponized in front of their face. They've watched them attack this guy over and over, call him Hitler. And I believe we're about to see a unified Republican Party. They just announced that Nikki Haley will now be in attendance at the RNC and a speaker at the RNC. She wasn't going to be before yesterday's events. Now she is. We're seeing the Republican Party unify, and I believe we're seeing an America unify. So as we move forward on the Why I'm Right podcast, as I say, this has been the Why I'm Right podcast. Carlos, thank you again for joining us. And I just told you why I'm right.
You've been listening to Why I'm Right. Thanks for being a part of the Common Sense Army. Our passion is to cut through the noise and confusion and to bring light to clickbait and outright lies in the media. Unafraid, unapologetic, real and raw. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, find us on Instagram at Why I'm Right, on X at Why I'm Right Pod. And for more, hit the website at www.whyimrightpodcast.com. See you next time.